Hi everybody, today I'm going to be going over my round 3 game from the Baltimore Open. I was playing white in this game. This was my third round of the tournament in the under 1600 section. It was a 110 minute plus 30-second bonus game, and I was ready for a win. I was desperate, you could say, for a win because I was at this point 1 out of 2, and I had 2 draws in my first 2 rounds, so I was like, can I even win a game of chess in the classical tournament? Like, I was getting desperate and I was like, okay, I have the white pieces. If there's any chance for me to get a win, it's this round. So I was playing an unrated player, and that's kind of scary because you really don't know anything about them. You don't know what they play, how good they are. So I'm just walking in blind. And also I don't really know how this affects my rating. So I was just like, oh, whatever, like, let's just have fun with it. Let's get a win. And I was also like a little bit more confident because they were unrated, which I don't know if that's good, but that is how I felt, at least. Walking in, I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Like, they're unrated. All right, so let's get into it. I played e4, and he played e6. The French, I was very happy to see this. I love playing against the French. I have a lot of prep against the French. I feel very comfortable in French positions, so I was very happy to see this. And so I played d4. He played d5, standard stuff. And then I played the advanced French, and he played c5, all normal stuff. I play c3, knight c6, knight f3. This is all standard stuff for the French. So this is a point where black can choose a whole bunch of different ways to develop, and they can go into sidelines or they can go into the main line being queen b6. And I'm super happy to see these positions. I am always so happy to play these positions. I like to play the Milner-Berry Gambit. It is so fun. I gambit the pawn, but I get some really fun and spicy positions from it. Also known as the easy system if you're part of the chess dojo. It is a really fun way to play, but my opponent did not play this, and he instead played a sideline in bishop d7. And I know some prep for this. One of my friends from the chess club that I'm a part of plays this, so I do have some experience in these positions. And so I saw bishop d7 and I was like, okay, I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to play bishop d3. After playing bishop d3, my opponent then played queen b6, which is a mistake. This is considered a mistake because I can just take the pawn. And after taking the pawn, my opponent takes back, and now they are aiming at my f2 pawn, but I can just castle and say, bye! What are you going to do? I'm going to castle and I'm going to protect this pawn and everything's going to be fine. So now my opponent played f6, which is a bit of a weird move because he's putting pressure on my e5 pawn. However, he is not castled, and I am super safe in the corner. My king is definitely much safer than his king, and at this point, because he played f6, I can now play b4, which is the best move because it's forcing his bishop to go back, and his bishop is now kind of stuck to having to go to e7, which is not a great square for that bishop. Like, what is he doing? Super ugly. So then I played rook e1, defending my pawn, and then he decided to take. With his knight, I took back, and then he took back with the pawn. I think this is incorrect because now I have this beautiful open diagonal. I sat here and thought for about like 3 minutes, and I was like, okay, I can definitely play queen h5. That looks great. And then I'm with a check, and I can definitely win the e5 pawn. And so I played queen e5, and then he played the only move to, other than, he can move his king, but the only move to not have to move your king, and he played g6, which is a mistake because now I couldn't just take this pawn. But I missed this in the game because now, he can't take back because I just win the rook. So because of that, I would have won an extra pawn. It would have been beautiful. But I missed this, and the game would have just been won for white. Like, this is just lost for black. I instead took this pawn, which is still good, but not the best move in the position. Like, I think this is like +1. The other move would have been like +3 or +2. So it was still a good move, but not the best move in the position. So my opponent played knight f6, pretty much the only thing that he can do. And it also helps, like, I guess he could have played also maybe like here, but it's better to develop his knight as well as defend the rook. Just inadvertently. And so he played the knight out, and then here I thought, for a little bit, I thought, okay, I want to play bishop h6. This looks great. And then I started seeing ghosts because I was like, oh, but if I play bishop h6, he can play this, and then my pieces are forked, and I can just take the rook. So I was seeing ghosts, and I was terrified of having this happen. And it's actually totally fine for me. Like, he's literally not allowed to play this because it's actually mate. Like, say he plays like king f7, I can just take the pawn, and then say he goes back, it is mate in 2 with check, defend, and mate. Or if he wants to step forward and go here, it's just mate in 1 right here. So he's literally not allowed to move that knight. I didn't realize that. If I would have definitely played bishop h6. Instead, I didn't see this and I played bishop g5. Trying to pin the knight and win the knight, I forgot that he can just castle and defend the knight, and I never win the knight, and it is horrible for me. So now I'm like, ooh, bishop h6 looks great now. It's just like, it's a whole mess. And so I played bishop h6, like, ooh, I can attack the rook. And then he just moves the rook. And this is bad. I just lost all of my advantage. This is like -2 for black. It is horrible for me. He's about to have this crazy attack open up, and it does not look good for me. And so he moved his rook, and I was like, ooh, knight g4 actually looks terrifying. What am I going to do if he plays knight g4? That looks so scary. And my pieces would be forked and everything would be collapsing, and I started getting really, really scared. I need to stop the knight from going to g4 by all means. I didn't realize how terrible this is for white. This position gets super spicy incredibly quickly. I thought, okay, I can't play f3 because my pawn is pinned to my king by the queen, and then I don't have a lot of more options, so let's just play h3. Which looks like a great move, right? You're like, okay, he can't play knight g4, except he can play knight g4. He can play knight g4, and now if I take, he takes here with check because it's defended by the rook, and then say I move over here, he goes here. I am like, where the hell am I going to go? I have to block with my queen, and now he takes my rook. And everything is trash. This is just lost for white. It is a completely lost position, and I would have lost the game here. Thankfully, my opponent didn't see this. My opponent saw h3 and got scared, and he did not want to play knight g4. He also was playing incredibly quickly. He played super fast here, and he played knight e4. And the game is back to equal. There is no advantage for either side. I didn't even realize that knight g4 was going to be an issue after I played h3. Obviously, I wouldn't have played h3. One of my friends, I was going over the game after this happened, and he was like, wait, he can just play knight g4. And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? And then we went through, and I was like, I could have lost this game so incredibly fast. But I didn't. I played bishop e3. Now I play bishop e3, of course, and attacking his queen, and he goes for a queen trade. I really don't have anything else. I have to trade queens. He takes back with the knight, which is a good thing, because if he would have taken back with the bishop, I would have been very happy to take and double his pawns. So he took back with the knight, and then I played knight d2, bringing my knight out. It needed to have better squares to go to, and he played b5. I had a little bit of an inkling that he was going to play b5 here, because I thought, okay, he doesn't want to defend these pawns anymore, and he wants to be able to push this pawn and then be able to move his rook so that his rook isn't passive. So I had an idea that he was going to be playing b5. It also cuts down my bishop's scope. It does cut down his bishop's scope, but that was, I think, that his plan behind this. We didn't go over the game after. We both were just, I think, exhausted because this was the second round of the day. So we didn't get to talk after the game. So I'm not sure what his plan behind it was, but that was my thought process behind him playing b5. So then I played knight b3. Very happy. I want to be able to go to c5. I spent almost 10 minutes on this move, as I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring my knight out first or bring one of my rooks over and then bring my knight out, but I decided on bringing my knight out because, it can't be bad. So I brought my knight out, and then he played e5. I knew that at some point he was going to be pushing his pawns, and I spent about 6 minutes here thinking about what I wanted to do. So I knew that he was going to be pushing one of these pawns to be able to basically kind of open everything up. And he does have 2 pawns in the center, so why not use them? I knew when the pawns were next to each other like this, it was a better position, at least for him, because they're protecting each other. As soon as he moves that pawn up, this pawn becomes weak, and it is now starting to become a target of mine. And so I knew that at some point he wanted to play this and focus on my bishop. And so I thought, okay, let me move this bishop out of the way and attack his knight. And I also kind of was just happy to trade off this knight because both of my pawns were on dark squares. And so I wasn't mad about trying to trade this bishop off. So then he plays e4, just as I thought. And I was actually happy to see it. It creates more chances for tactics now that the pawns are not next to each other, and the d5 pawn is weak when the e4 pawn is pushed. And so I took the knight, forcing him to take back. He cannot take this way because then I just win 2 pieces because he can't take back. So I would have just been +5 in this position. And so this would have been great for me. So he can't take back this way. He is forced to take back like this, and then I'm going to move my bishop. I thought, okay, I can play either bishop c2 or bishop e2. These are both of the options. I decided to not play bishop c2 because I liked the prospects of my bishop being on the e2 square because it can look out at a better scope, and it can also support the c4 push eventually. Whereas if it's on c2, it blocks the whole entire C file and it has an ugly scope. So I was like, you know what? It's better to just put it on E2 because the scope is better and it also helps with the push. So then he played rook C8, just trying to attack my C pawn. I played rook AC1, defending my C pawn, and then he played bishop F4. And he's attacking my rook, and I was fine with this. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to move. I played rook C2, and then he played A6, getting rid of all of his weaknesses, or most of his weaknesses. This d5 pawn is still pretty weak, but he doesn't have to defend this pawn anymore with the bishop. His bishop is now free to move. So I played rook d1, attacking his d5 pawn, and then he played bishop f5, and I knew this was a mistake. I was like, dude, what are you doing? And so he played bishop f5, and I immediately was like, okay. I thought for like 2 minutes, and I played g4. Like, hey, you're not going to get this pushing in on me. I'm sorry, you're not, and you're not going to be able to open this up, and I'm just going to push your bishop back. You're not going to have time for it. So he actually sighed. He was like, when I played g4, and then he moved his bishop back to defend his pawn, and then I attack his bishop to, get rid of the only defender of this pawn so that eventually I can win this pawn. I'm also attacking this pawn. So then he moved his rook thinking, okay, I'm defending both pieces. Dude, I want to trade. So he traded, and then I won this pawn, and I was very happy at this point. I had about 38 minutes on the clock, and he had close to an hour. He was like, actually, I think more than an hour. He had maybe an hour and 15 at this point. He was playing very fast, and I was the only one really taking time in the position, which can be kind of scary because it's like, am I taking too much time or are you not taking enough time? And I think it was the latter. I think he just wasn't taking enough time to evaluate the positions. And so then he played rook c7, trying to bring more pressure to the c file because that is where all the action is going to happen. I played now c4. It is time to break. And he played e3. I was fine with seeing e3. I knew that he wanted to do some things. If he would have played instead b takes c4, I could have then played rook takes. If you wanted to trade rooks, I would have been very happy to see this because I am up a pawn. Oh, I'm up a pawn, so it's 2v1. And, this would have been better for white, and this is winning for white. And so now he played e3 instead, and I just took the pawn. And then he took the pawn back with his rook. And I just moved my other rook saying, hey, do you want to trade? I would love to trade. But he didn't want to trade. He instead wanted to put more pressure on my c pawn. If he would have traded, playing rook takes c3, I would have traded. He would have, say, maybe taken. I would have taken with check. And then he would have just had to move his king. I could have also played rook takes c4. And then if he takes back, I take with check. And then I'm going to win this pawn. And it's great for me because, he's going to have to move. And now I'm going to have 2 passed pawns. And this is just winning for white. And so he didn't play that. He instead played rook e4, just moving his rook out of the way. And now I was like, damn, okay, I can't take this pawn because then he takes my pawn. Sorry. I can't take this pawn because then he takes my rook. I also can't push because then he wins this pawn. And so I knew I had to play a3 before playing anything else. So I played a3, trying to support the c5 push so that I would then have a passed pawn. He then took the pawn. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. So I moved my rook out of the way, and this is great for me because this eventually makes a, like, just like a blockade here. This pawn can't move, and this bishop cannot defend this pawn because this is a dark squared bishop, and this is a light squared pawn that is being blockaded, and I have a light squared bishop that is attacking this pawn, so I'm going to eventually win this pawn, which is great because at this point we were equal in material, and I needed to win my extra pawn back. So now he played king g7, bringing his king into the fight. Makes sense. I'm going to do the same thing. And so he brought his king further, and I decided now is the time to take. And I took with the bishop because taking back with the rook kind of just brings us to a bishop versus bishop, and I'm up a pawn, so which is good, but I didn't really want to have my bishop having to help with promotion because my rook is better. It can defend more squares, and I would rather have the rook. So I took with the bishop instead, and then he played rook e3, and I was like, oh no. I got really scared because I was like, damn, he's attacking both my pawns. I'm going to lose a pawn. This is horrible. This is really sad. And I was very upset. So I took his pawn, and then he took my h pawn. And I was like, you know what? All right, this is what we're going to do. This has to be winning for me. Like, I have 2 passed pawns. This has to be winning. So I didn't have a lot of time here. I only had about 19 minutes, and which is not a lot of time. He had close to an hour. So he took the pawn, and I was like, you know what? Check. Make him move, and I'm gonna push my pawn. This has to be winning. I don't understand if this is not winning. I thought it was golden. Turns out this is a draw. Somehow this is a draw, and this is just like absurd to me. Black can just play rook a3, and now say I want to play like a5, he can just play bishop d2, attacking both my pawns, and now I can say like check the king, and then he's gonna take my pawn, and then say what I'm going to move over so that when he takes, I can then win his bishop. And even though I win his bishop, he wins both my pawns. And this is a freaking draw with perfect play. There is no way of making progress, and it is horrible. So this would have been a draw. I didn't know that. Now I do. You learn something new every day in chess. And thankfully, my opponent did not play rook a3. The game turned in my favor because he took the pawn. And spot if you can see why this is a blunder. I'll give you a couple seconds. You're right. It's because of bishop c8. It's pitting the rook and the king, or skewering, I guess. Now the king has to move, and I take the rook, and it's I'm up the exchange, and now I'm going to push these pawns. He played a little bit further on. I checked him. I'm going to win another pawn, and he resigned. He actually resigned in this position because I would have won an extra pawn. And I was very happy to see this. I won my first game. I had no idea that this was a draw. I am very happy to see that, my opponent just blundered. And honestly, it was a really long game. We had been playing for, I think, like 6-7 hours of chess at this point, depending on how long his morning game was. He had close to an hour on the clock. I think he had about 53 minutes in this ending position, and I had 18. So he definitely had a time advantage on me if this would have been forced to go to a draw. However, he took the pawn. I saw that pawn, and I was like, that's such a poison pawn on g4. If he ever takes that pawn with his rook on h3, I'm going to be so happy. And then he actually took it. I was like, oh my God, he did it. Wait, let me make sure that this is actually like a skewer. And I just looked, and I was like, I wrote down his move, and I like calmly moved my bishop, and he was like, ugh. And I was like, yes, I just won this game. So good. I was ecstatic to see this. The game ended up going on for a few moves, and then he resigned. He actually told me after the game, he was like, I saw at the beginning of the game, like when you played that queen h5 move, I totally thought I was toast. And then you took the e5 pawn all the way back. Let's go back about here. Yeah, so he saw this and he was like, dude, I totally thought you were going to play bishop takes g6. And I was like, no, I didn't see it, like, until later on, but it was too late. And so he was like, dude, the game would have been over. Like, I was so upset. The game would have been over in 12 moves. But, that's not what ended up actually happening, obviously. So I ended up taking the e-pawn. But it still ended up being a super interesting game. I was shook that I had won my first classical tournament game, and I had won with white. I had no idea how this was going to affect my pairings for my future rounds. Because this was a Saturday night game, so I still had 2 more rounds the next day. I wasn't sure how that was actually going to affect that. But I was ecstatic nonetheless. My friend was actually watching this game when it was happening. I'll insert a little photo here. He was taking photos during the game, and I was literally just like my hands in my like hair, just like super focused on the board. I was like, I have to win this game. I will not take a draw here. I'm sick of the draws. This would have been my third draw in a row. I didn't want to draw. I wanted to win. And then knowing now that this position going back was a draw is crazy to me. I know now that even if you have two passed pawns, it doesn't matter because they can still put pressure. We both made crazy mistakes. He could have been winning. I could have been winning. The eval bar was going like this, like the whole entire game. But I got the win in the end. And yeah, I was very happy. I went into my next game super ready to get another win. I got paired with a 15-50 in my next round, which you guys will see in my next video. It is the craziest game I've ever played in my entire life. Ever, over the board, online, rated, non-rated. It is the most insane game I've ever played. I'm very excited to show you guys. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.